This podcast was produced using artificial intelligence and refined by human editors.
Hello, wanderers, globetrotters, and armchair travelers. Welcome to another episode of Travel with Lara and Luca, the podcast where we whisk you away to the world's most enchanting destinations. I'm Luca, your fellow travel enthusiast.
And I'm Lara, ready to guide you through the cobbled streets and storybook canals of our latest adventure. Today, we're diving into the heart of Denmark, the serene and splendid city of Copenhagen.
Ah, Copenhagen, the city where fairy tales brush up against sleek modern design, where bicycles outnumber cars, and where every street corner seems to exude coziness.
You said it, Luca. Copenhagen isn't just a stop on a traveler's itinerary. It's an experience that embodies that famous Danish concept of Hygge.
The art of creating warmth and enjoying the simple things. And let's not forget, Copenhagen is also a frontrunner when it comes to sustainability and living green.
That's right. This episode is not just a journey through the city's must-see sights, but also a deep dive into what makes Copenhagen an absolute delight for the senses and the soul.
Over the next 45 minutes, we'll be your chatty, digressive, offbeat guides, sharing our favorite spots, the yummy bites, surprising tales, and of course, the must-see places that give Copenhagen its charm.
And we won't be shying away from the odd and the quirky because, let's face it, who doesn't love a good, weird fact?
But before we get carried away with our wanderlust, let me bring us back to our first segment, where we'll be exploring the iconic sights of Copenhagen. Think the Little Mermaid, Tivoli Gardens, and the colorful Nyhavn harbor, but with a Lara and Luca twist.
I fondly remember my first time stepping foot in Copenhagen, Luca. There I was, fresh off the plane, eager to soak in as much of the city as I could, when the first thing that struck me was...
Let me guess, the sheer number of bikes?
Exactly. An entire ballet of cyclists moving through the city with such grace. It's the pulse of Copenhagen, and it immediately drew me in.
And to think my first impression was slightly less graceful. I just hailed a taxi from the airport, and there I was, marveling at the spires reaching up to the sky, when suddenly...
You came face to face with a Viking cyclist?
Viking might be an exaggeration, but the encounter was nothing short of epic. That's when I realized Copenhagen wasn't just a city. It's an experience that starts the moment you arrive.
Which brings us perfectly to the iconic sights, Luca. Even the way these landmarks are intertwined with the city's day-to-day bustle is something to behold.
True, every brick and statue has a story, from the regal Amalienborg Palace to the panoramic views atop the Round Tower.
I can't wait to dive into those stories, Luca. Copenhagen's rich tapestry is about to be unfurled for all of our listeners.
A tapestry stitched with vibrant history, charming architecture, and the stories of the people who bring this place to life.
But before we start on about the Little Mermaid's secrets and why Tivoli Gardens may just be the happiest place in Denmark, let's take a moment to appreciate the beauty that is Copenhagen.
Picture this, a city where even the coldest days have a warm glow, where the water in the harbor is so clear you can dip your toes in it. And yes, people really do that.
And where the night is never just night, but a canvas for the city lights reflecting off the canals. Ah, Luca, it's poetic.
It's Copenhagen, Lara. And with that lovely imagery settled in our listeners' minds, let's set sail to the heart of the city's iconic sights.
Don't forget to stick around, because after we've walked you through Copenhagen's storied streets, we'll be serving up the delectable details of Danish cuisine that go far beyond the pastry case. Rolling through the cobbled streets and along the canals, we're now diving into the iconic sights of Copenhagen. This city might be compact, Luca, but it's layered with history, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely, Lara. Just starting with our first icon, the Little Mermaid, you hit a wave of cultural significance. Perched on her rock, she's been contemplatively gazing out to sea for over a century now.
Inspired by Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tale, she's a tad smaller than most expect, right? A tiny beauty with a grandiose story.
Size isn't everything, Lara. I remember the look of surprise on tourists' faces, almost as enchanting as the statue itself.
Moving along from our smaller-than-expected friend, we can't ignore the allure of Nyhavn. With its vibrant facades and historical vessels, it's a postcard-perfect scene.
Ah, Nyhavn, the sailor's haunt turned chic promenade. Did you know Hans Christian Andersen lived at number 20?
I did. Imagine the stories those walls could tell. And now it's brimming with jazz clubs and cozy eateries.
From fairy tales to amusement parks, next up is Tivoli Gardens. It's one of the world's oldest running theme parks.
Right, and it's not just about the rides, folks. Tivoli is a nostalgic slice of history, with gardens, shows, and even a few peacocks strutting around.
Indeed, Lara. And if anyone's curious about Walt Disney finding inspiration for his own parks, a stroll through Tivoli will certainly provide answers.
Speaking of strolls, Luca, have you ever sauntered up the round tower?
Many times, Lara and I never tire of that panoramic view. No stairs in sight, just a long, winding spiral walkway to the top.
Built by King Christian IV as an observatory, the Runde Tarn is still used by amateur astronomers today. It's a real testament to Danish design.
From stars to royals, we have Amalienborg Palace, the residence of the Danish monarchy.
Oh, precisely. Plus, witnessing the changing of the guard is a quintessential Danish experience. Those bearskin hats do make a statement.
They sure do. And how about the Danish knack for design, Lara? We've got to mention the skyline adorned with spires, like the one atop Our Savior's Church, with its external spiral stair.
Absolutely mesmerizing. But speaking of design, let's tease our listeners a bit. Up next, we'll be sinking our teeth into something equally delightful.
That's right. Stay tuned as we explore the Danish palate and savor the flavors of Copenhagen, famous for its delicious cuisine, after this iconic journey.
And with those iconic sights still flickering in our minds, we're moving on to something that stirs the senses in a whole different way. Welcome to the delicious segment of our Copenhagen exploration where taste reigns supreme.
Ah, the food, Lara. I vividly remember stepping off the plane and being hit with that cool Nordic air, my stomach growling like a Viking's call to feast.
Well, Copenhagen surely answered that call with gusto. I remember you made a beeline straight for the nearest smørrebrød shop.
Guilty as charged. But let me clarify, this isn't just any open-faced sandwich we're talking about. It's an art form. Those rye bread foundations topped with an array of delightful toppings, pickled herring, egg, shrimp, you name it.
And it's a testament to Danish culinary creativity. You know, they have contests for the most beautifully arranged smørrebrød. It's like watching food fashion shows.
So true. And if you really want the best experience, head to a place that lets you build your own. The combination possibilities are endless.
Speaking of endless, what about their pastries, Luca? Danish pastries, which they call wienerbrød, are just
a deceptive term, considering they're not actually from Denmark originally.
Exactly, the name's a funny quirk of history, but let's not digress over pastry nomenclature. The taste, that perfect buttery crispness.
Oh, I dream about those cinnamon whirls and poppy seed twists. They pair perfectly with a good strong coffee, don't you think?
They're the defining feature of the Hygge cafes dotted around the city. These little havens of coziness where you can while away an afternoon.
Isn't it just wonderful how Copenhagen invites you to slow down, savor the coffee, the cake, the company? That art of Hygge we mentioned before.
And if it's a culinary adventure you're after, there's no place like the street food markets, right? Refn, a feast for all senses with those upcycled containers and trucks.
It's an avant-garde, waterfront dining utopia. From smoky barbecue to zesty tacos, from organic juices to craft beers, it's a stampede of flavors.
Or if the amusement of Tivoli is more your speed, they've got the Tivoli Food Hall. Classic Danish, Asian, Italian, it's the United Nations of flavors.
And after such an international appetizer, you might be inclined to ask about high-end dining. And yes, Copenhagen's got you covered.
Noma, the name itself almost a synonym for the new Nordic movement, multiple times named the best restaurant in the world.
Does it live up to the hype? Oh, it does. It's as much a culinary pilgrimage as it is a meal. But, you don't need to chase Michelin stars for an amazing meal in this city.
Absolutely. You can dive into places where locals go, the bistros and small restaurants where Danish cuisine shines, without the celebrity status.
And these are the places where chefs passionate about organic and local produce make simple food exceptional.
You're so on point, Luca. And while we're talking being on point, we mustn't skip the iconic smørrebrød. I mean, if you didn't try one in Copenhagen, did you even go?
It'd be a culinary crime not to. It's not just lunch, it's a showcase of Danish ingenuity on a piece of rye bread. Plus, they're so beautifully presented that you almost don't want to eat them.
That's the thing about Copenhagen's food scene, it's a visual feast too. Presentation is key, and oh, how they deliver.
Speaking of delivering, Copenhagen surprised me with its cocktails too. Cozy bars with skilled bartenders who blend local ingredients into some really knockout concoctions.
Indeed, whether it's the food or the drinks, Copenhagen is an urban gourmand's dream. And Luca, that's just a little taste of it all.
A little taste with a big impact. But you know what else has a big impact? The secrets and stories behind the city's lesser-known attractions.
Ah, you're dipping into our next segment already. Hidden gems.
You caught me. I'm just excited to delve into those tucked-away treasures next, Lara. So, shall we leave our listeners salivating for more?
Definitely. Make sure to join us as we unearth Copenhagen's hidden gems, where every nook and cranny has a story to tell.
Until then, continue to indulge your wanderlust, friends.
And stay curious, stay adventurous, and stay hungry for the next chapter of our journey in Copenhagen.
So Lara, wandering the well-trodden streets of Copenhagen is one thing, but delving into the city's secret corners, that's where the real adventure lies, don't you think?
Absolutely, Luca. In fact, that's the perfect intro to this segment where we're going to peel back the curtain on Copenhagen's hidden gems. These are the places that might not be on every tourist's map, but they certainly deserve to be.
Could not agree more. And let's start with a place that many might find a bit unexpected, Assistance Cemetery. It sounds morbid, but it's actually a beautiful and peaceful haven, isn't it?
Morbid is the last word I'd use for it, Luca. It's like a green oasis. Strolling around, you'll find the graves of famous Danes like Søren Kierkegaard and Hans Christian Andersen.
Walking in the footsteps of the great storyteller himself. And it has this tranquil, almost poetic air that kind of gets you reflecting on the stories these people left behind.
Exactly. Now drag your thoughts from the beautifully eerie to the outright quirky. Have you had a chance to slide down the red and black striped hills of Superkeilen Park?
Oh, that place is a masterpiece of urban Danish design. It's broken up into zones. There's the Red Square, the Black Market, and the Green Park, each one pulsating with energy.
Remember the last time we were there? We played the game where we tried to guess the origin of the different objects. The dental sign from Qatar, the neon Russian sign, the octopus slide from Japan.
Still proud of my guess on the Moroccan fountain. But speaking of guessing, I bet few have stumbled upon the secret of Freetown Christiania, right? It's like its own little universe inside Copenhagen.
True that. Christiania is not just about the colorful murals and the unique architecture. It's a community, an alternative society with its own rules and a very distinct vibe.
And nothing beats the unexpected. I still laugh about that time I walked into a yoga class instead of the organic bakery there.
All those peaceful faces turning slowly to stare at you, I'll cherish that memory forever. But let's not forget about the treasures on Jægersborggade. Artists, potters, pastry chefs, and coffee connoisseurs come together on this street.
That coffee shop, remember? The one with beans sourced from all over the world? The scent alone is like a global expedition.
A caffeinated expedition, for sure. Now, what about viewing Copenhagen from a different angle? One of my favorite things is to take a canal tour and get that Venice of the North experience.
Oh, the canals. You slide under bridges, pass by old and new buildings, and the tour guides always have that perfect mix of historical knowledge and cheeky commentary.
Truly an underrated way to see the city. It's not just about the destination, but also about those hidden spots you discover along the way.
Plus, you get to wave to all the happy cyclists on the bridges.
I love how every wave is like an unspoken recommendation to explore more. Speaking of which, I wonder what our listeners will be tempted to explore after our next segment. Any hints, Luca?
Oh, only a segment filled with weird facts you never knew you needed to know about Copenhagen. Stay tuned. It's going to be intriguing, amusing, and definitely weird.
Can't wait for that. But until then, keep searching for the hidden gems around you, even if you're not in Copenhagen just yet. So now that we've shared the deliciousness of the Danish cuisine, let's pivot to something equally delectable for the eyes and the soul. Welcome to segment 4. Buckle up, dear travelers, as we tour Copenhagen's must-see places.
Lara, one simply cannot talk about must-see spots without heralding Christianborg Palace. This place is brimming with political drama and royal flair, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely, Luca. It's like walking onto the set of a historical epic, except the stories here are real. It's the seat of the Danish Parliament, the Supreme Court, and even the Prime Minister's office. Talk about all power roads leading to one palace.
And let's not forget about the royal reception rooms, dripping with regal elegance. I always wonder if the walls of these rooms could talk.
They would probably speak in very polite and eloquent Danish, I bet. Now, moving from the historical allure to a stunning piece of modern architecture, the Black Diamond. It's a bit of a misnomer. One might expect to find a royal treasury inside.
Instead, you'll find an abundance of knowledge because it's a library. But what a library it is. It's more like a cultural haven with its sleek lines reflecting the waters of the harbor.
It's also an architectural marvel, how the angles and glass create those reflections. It's like it's sending Morse code to all the other buildings. Hey, look at me, I'm gorgeous!
Speaking of reflections, the National Museum of Denmark reflects centuries of Danish history under one pretty impressive roof. This place is a treasure trove for history buffs.
It's not just another history museum, it's the history museum. From the Stone Age, through the Viking era, all the way to modern Danish design, you could spend days getting lost in time.
Oh, a day easily. I can never get enough of the Viking stuff. Makes me want to build a ship and explore the high seas myself.
Luca, I've seen how you handle a rowboat. Let's stick to dry land, shall we? Speaking of which, Copenhagen Zoo. The significance of this place doesn't just lie in its historic buildings, it's all about their conservation work.
That's right. They're known for their efforts in biodiversity conservation. Plus, they have this fantastical elephant house designed by Sir Norman Foster, which, frankly, I could ramble on about for hours.
Yep, the animals live in style here in Copenhagen. Switching gears from the animal kingdom to an oasis of art, we must mention the Glyptotek. It's an art lover's dream combined with a botanist's paradise.
The central winter garden is a spot for peace and tranquility. Surrounded by marble statues, palm trees, you half expect a toga-clad philosopher to stroll past.
Wouldn't that be a sight? But for something completely out of this world. The Blue Planet, Northern Europe's largest aquarium. This place isn't just an aquarium, it's like you're diving into another universe.
The swirling design of the building is a wonder in itself. It mimics a whirlpool, and inside, you're surrounded by marine life of all shapes and sizes. My personal favorite, the ocean tank with the sharks and rays.
Such majestic creatures, and the tunnel where they swim all around you, it's magic, pure and unadulterated magic, just like the essence of Copenhagen itself.
Every single must-see place we've talked about has that unique quality, a blend of history, art, and a touch of Danish charm.
They are the kind of spots that turn an ordinary trip into an extraordinary journey. Copenhagen really has a lot in store for any eager explorer.
Which leads us perfectly into what's coming up next. If you've ever wanted to uncover the quirkier side of Copenhagen,
prepare yourself for the strange and the curious, because next up, we're diving into the city's weird facts. Did you know there's a genetically modified little mermaid?
Or that the Danes have unusual laws about naming your child. Stay tuned, because we're about to lift the veil on some bizarre and humorous tidbits that could only be found in wonderful Copenhagen.
All that and more after this short break. Don't go anywhere, because we have plenty more tales of the enchanting Danish capital. So, dear listeners, you've stuck with us into segment 5, where we dive into the quirky and downright weird facts about Copenhagen. Prepare to be amused.
And trust us, it doesn't get weirder than this. Now, Lara, I know you've been dying to talk about Hygge. It's everywhere in Copenhagen, but is it truly everywhere?
You know, Luca, Hygge is like the air in Copenhagen. It's omnipresent, But funnily enough, it's such a hyped concept that tourists might think Danes just sit around in candlelit rooms all day wrapped in woolen socks.
And yet, you won't find Hygge in the bustling bike lanes or in the middle of a packed metro. But mark my words, somewhere nearby, there's a Dane dreaming about their next Hygge moment.
Exactly. Now, from cozy to colossal, let's talk about the elephant in the room, or in this case, at the Carlsberg Brewery. Ever wonder about that unique elephant gate?
Talk about making an entrance. Those elephants have been holding up that gate since 1901. But Lara, isn't there a rather fascinating fact behind these stone pachyderms?
Indeed. Each elephant wears a swastika, which, before it was appropriated, was a symbol of luck. Imagine all the double takes from visitors who don't know the history.
It's a striking reminder of how symbols can change over time. Now, for another twist on a familiar sight, have you seen the genetically modified Little Mermaid?
Ah, she's our regular Little Mermaid's dystopian sister, created by Bjorn Nørgaard. She's quite enhanced, and she's a statement on science going too far. A sight that'll make you both chuckle and ponder.
Only in Copenhagen can a mermaid stir up a debate on genetic engineering. Moving on to an oddity not many speak about. Did you know about Denmark's law against naming children whatever you please?
That's right. There's actually a list of pre-approved names, and if yours isn't on the list, you have to get special permission. But I've heard, Luca, you've been considering a name change to King Luca the Awesome?
Only if it gets approved by the Danish name approval authorities. Next on our weird fact list, tower running races. It's not just a run in the park, it's a vertical dash up Copenhagen's historic towers.
Think of it as the Stairmaster from hell, except with gorgeous views if you're not too busy gasping for air. Let's not forget the outfits. Some runners wear traditional Viking garb.
From Vikings to guards, that smoothly brings us to the Danish Royal Guard and their uniforms. They're not just fancy, they've got a peculiar design story. Any fun facts there, Lara?
Ah, the bearskin hats. Actual bear fur, mind you, which is dramatic when you think about it. But the fun fact is that the height of the hat was designed to make the guards appear more intimidating.
Nothing says don't mess with us like towering bear hats. But hey, what's more intimidating than a bear on your head, except maybe a Danish winter wind?
Oh, Luca, I think the Danish winter wind takes the crown on that one. Which reminds me, our episode is breezing past. Let's give our listeners a taste of what historical flavors will be unraveling in the next segment.
That's right, Lara. In our next segment, we'll time travel through the cobblestone streets, exploring the Viking roots and tales of fiery rebirths that shaped this remarkable city.
Until then, keep wondering about those quirky elephant gates and whether we should stockpile some of those funky bear hats for our next chilly recording session.
Might just mess up our hair, Lara, but it's worth it for the fashion statement. See you all in our history segment, where the past isn't just about dusty books, but stories that still echo through Copenhagen's alleys.
We're delving deep into the annals of time now as we explore the rich history of Copenhagen in this segment of Travel with Lara and Luca.
History, where every cobblestone and spire has a tale to tell. And speaking of beginnings, did you know Copenhagen's story goes back all the way to the Vikings, Lara?
That's right, Luca. Though today's Copenhagen is all about modern living, it traces its roots to a humble fishing village established in the Viking Age. It's hard to picture now amidst all the bikes and cafes.
From a fishing village to a bustling trade hotspot. But our fair city has seen more than just trade winds blowing through its harbors. Like the Great Fire of 1728, a real turning point, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. The fire destroyed large parts of medieval Copenhagen, but as often happens, the city emerged stronger, giving rise to the Copenhagen we know and adore.
And that's the spirit of this city. Resilience. Like a phoenix rising, Copenhagen was reborn with new neighborhoods like Frederiksstaden and the iconic landmark Amalienborg Palace.
Indeed. And let's not forget the Danish Golden Age. That was quite the cultural blossoming in the 19th century. Art, philosophy, science, leading to the works of Kierkegaard and, of course, Christian Andersen.
Their legacy has left an indelible mark, not just on Copenhagen, but on all of Denmark. Andersen's fairy tales have enchanted children worldwide, and Kierkegaard's philosophy resonates to this day.
But history wasn't always just about cultural booms. The city's strategic location meant it was inevitably affected by war, especially the World Wars.
True, Copenhagen was occupied by Germany during the Second World War, but it remained a beacon of hope. The story of how the Danish resistance used bicycles to sabotage the German operations is both unique and inspiring.
Rosebuds fashioned into secret messages, whispers in the night, the stuff great novels are made of, but it was very real for the resistance fighters who showed exemplary courage.
And let's not overlook the remarkable rescue of the Danish Jews. When word got out of the impending German roundup, Danes of all backgrounds came together to spirit away their Jewish neighbors to safety in Sweden.
These events, though somber, show the strength and character of Copenhagen and its people. Yet, out of these adversities, the city has consistently emerged with hope and a vision for a peaceful and prosperous future.
Speaking of the future, after the wars, Copenhagen rapidly reinvented itself yet again, becoming a hub for design, innovation, and environmental consciousness.
That reinvention, the city's ongoing dialogue with its past and future, is what makes Copenhagen not just a historical destination, but a modern beacon of livability and sustainability.
And that brings us to today's Copenhagen, a city that celebrates its history, cherishes the old, embraces the new, and always looks forward.
Well, history buffs, that's just a primer on the rich historical tapestry that Copenhagen is. With each step through its streets, you're walking through centuries of resilience, creativity, and community spirit.
And if that stroll through the past has stirred your curiosity, just you wait. In our next segment, we're going to arm you with the juiciest expert travel tips to transform your curiosity into a grand Danish adventure.
Stay tuned for those must-have nuggets of travel wisdom that could only come from your favorite chatty, whimsical, and slightly quirky Copenhagen connoisseurs. Us.
So, grab your notepads, pens, or just a fresh cup of coffee as we reveal how to navigate Copenhagen like the pros we've become.
See you in a flash with insights that'll make your future travel stories the envy of any dinner party.
Welcome back, Globetrotters. You're tuned into Travel with Lara and Luca, and we're about to deep dive into some expert travel tips for roaming around Copenhagen.
Oh, yes, Luca. It's all about getting around efficiently, so you can spend more time enjoying those Danish delights, right?
Absolutely. And in Copenhagen, the bike is king. There are more bikes than people, Lara.
True that. All you need to fit in is to hop on a two-wheeler, and you'll blend right in with the locals. It's the perfect way to see the city.
Though for those a bit wary of city cycling, the public transport is spot on. Trains, buses, even harbor boats, it's all synchronized like a well-choreographed ballet.
No joke. And speaking of synchronization, the city's walkability is lovely. Most of the major sites are within a pleasant walk from each other. Just make sure to bring comfortable shoes.
Now, Lara, when would you say is the best time to visit Copenhagen?
I'd say late spring to early autumn. You get to enjoy the bright and long days, and the whole city just seems to bloom with life. Also, the open-air markets.
Oh, they're joyous. And Christmas time. Copenhagen becomes this whimsical winter wonderland, if you can brave the cold, that is.
Yes, for our fellow holiday enthusiasts, Tivoli at Christmas is magical. Although if you can't deal with chilly weather, summertime is your best bet.
Quite right. Danish summer is more, let's wear a light jacket, rather than let's fry an egg on the sidewalk. Anyway, language shouldn't be a barrier here, what with everyone speaking impeccable English.
But throwing in a tak for thank you or a hej for hello goes a long way in endearing yourself to the locals.
Agreed. And you must partake in the seasonal activities. In summer, there's swimming in the clean harbor baths, isn't it, Lara?
A must-do, or picnicking in the King's Garden. For wintertime, ice skating at Frederiksberg Gardens is just enchantingly Hygge.
Shopping for design goods is quintessential here. The Danes are design pioneers, after all. Ilum's Boligus is your design department store heaven.
Or hit up the local flea markets. You never know what treasures you'll uncover.
That being said, accommodation in Copenhagen spans from the quirky hostel right through to high-end hotels, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and you'll want to book early, especially in peak seasons. Be it a designer boutique hotel or a charming B&B, you'll find your perfect match.
And if you're contending with a budget, then fear not. Copenhagen has plenty of comfortable hostels that won't break the bank.
Plus, they're fantastic for meeting fellow travelers. Shared stories over breakfast, there's no better travel culture experience, right?
Nothing better, Lara. And with those cozy common areas, hostels here take Hygge to a whole different level.
True that. So pick your perch wisely. Whether it's the bustling city center or the serene outskirts, each corner of Copenhagen offers a unique vibe.
Now, mind your clinks when cheersing, or skåling as they say, with your Danish beer.
Meanwhile, keep your travel etiquette sharp. The Danes are polite, punctual, and believe in personal space.
Indeed. And now, dear listeners, I feel a side excursion beckoning. Tune in for our next segment where we'll take you beyond the city limits to explore majestic castles, mysterious museums, and tranquil coastal towns.
Oh, I can't wait to share the stories about Kronborg Castle, the actual setting for Shakespeare's Hamlet.
For those enamored with modern art, the Louisiana Museum will steal your heart, especially with the ocean as its backdrop.
Until then, keep dreaming of Danish adventures. We're Lara and Luca, signing off from the heart of Copenhagen. Stay curious and remember, every journey writes its own story.
Can't wait to turn the page with you all next time. Farewell, travelers. All right, adventurers hat on. It's time to explore beyond the cobblestone streets of Copenhagen. Ready for some side excursions, Lara?
Born ready, Luca? Kicking things off, how about we sail to the shores of Shakespearean drama at Kronborg Castle?
Ah, Elsinore, or Helsingør in Danish, the very castle that inspired Hamlet's home. It's not just for literature buffs, though, right?
Absolutely. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and, they say every nook and ghostly cranny has a story.
Speaking of ghostly, did you ever take that midnight tour? The one where they say you can meet Hamlet's father's ghost?
I did. Honestly, the darkness and the stories give you this thrilling chill. It's perfectly eerie.
But by day, a stroll around the castle grounds is just picturesque. It's like each cannon there has guarded the sea for centuries, alert for the echoing footsteps of soldiers past.
So poetic, Luca. Next up, has modern art ever taken your breath away in the middle of nature?
Oh, you must be talking about the Louisiana Museum of Modern Art.
Yes, the sculpture park with views of Sweden across the water. It's an art lover's nirvana.
Nirvana, with a capital N. The exhibitions there are always so thought-provoking. I remember a piece that was just this echo of sound and light, felt like it connected straight to my soul.
That's Louisiana for you, a place where modern art and landscape hold hands by the sea.
From art to antiquity, shall we?
Let's. To the town of Roskilde with its Viking ship museum. Standing there, gazing at those ancient vessels, you can almost hear the oars slicing through the fjord.
And each year, they have that Viking ship festival, where they sail the fjord and you can jump aboard. Did you ever wear the helmet, Lara?
Oh, I did, complete with braids and all. It's interactive history at its best.
History that's still very much alive. And Roskilde's not just about the Vikings, that music festival.
Rock on. Roskilde Festival is a pilgrimage for music lovers. Remember when we tried to count all the different national flags there?
Gave up after 50. But let's pivot from festivities to the fascinating geological site of Stevens Klint.
A cliff that tells a story 66 million years old. It's a layer cake of Earth's history with views that are simply mesmerizing.
They say this is where the effects of the asteroid that ended the era of dinosaurs are etched into stone. Standing on that cliff, looking out at the sea, you're at the crossroads of time.
It's humbling and it's beautiful. Just like our next stop, the fishing village of Dragur. What's your favorite thing about it, Luca?
Oh, without a doubt, it's those little houses with hollyhocks climbing up the walls. And the cobblestone streets, they have this timeless hush about them.
Dragur feels like an open-air museum, doesn't it? Seafaring history woven into each quaint alleyway.
Exactly. And there's that smokery, right? The one where we had the most amazing smoked salmon.
Couldn't get enough of that. And for our final destination, let's set sail for the island of Bornholm, affectionately known as the Sunshine Island.
Sunshine, art, and nature wrapped into one. Did you know, Lara, I've never found a place that so perfectly captures the essence of Danish summer as Bornholm?
Neither have I. with those round churches, the rugged cliffs, and those little smokehouses dotting the island.
Bike around the island, and every turn is a new discovery, from glassblowers to ancient ruins. And the sunsets, Lara, you remember those?
How could I forget? The sun kissing the Baltic Sea with hues I've never seen anywhere else. It's like saying goodnight in the language of colors.
After a day exploring Bornholm, you feel like you've touched a deeper part of Denmark, something eternal.
And with that, we wrap up our side excursion journey. But if you thought this was spellbinding, just you wait.
Next, we'll return to Copenhagen and the heart of the city, uncovering even more at the conclusion of today's travels.
My favorite part's coming up. Final thoughts, where we go beyond the sights, sharing personal reflections and all the feels.
So stick around as we bring our Copenhagen Chronicles to a close, sharing the moments that truly took our breath away. Here we are, wrapping up another fabulous journey through the enchanting city of Copenhagen. It's been an absolute delight unpacking the sights, the history, and the flavors of this Danish delight with all of you.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Luca. We've wandered through iconic sites, got our taste buds dancing with Danish cuisine, and uncovered hidden gems where the cobblestones whisper stories of the past.
Honestly, Lara, I love how each episode feels like we're peeling back the layers of a city. Today, with Copenhagen, it felt like we've revealed a vibrant yet cozy world that's just brimming with charm.
I'm already nostalgic, Luca. Reflecting on those moments, my favorite has to be our chat about the idyllic canals of Nyhavn. The history, those colorful facades, it's like a painting you can walk into.
I was particularly moved by our visit to the Assistens Cemetery. There's something so poetic about a place of rest that radiates so much life and history. And our yarns about the Freetown Christiania, that was eye-opening.
Definitely a highlight, Luca. And let's not forget the wonders of that Danish pasty, or should I say wienerbrød. My taste buds are still doing a happy dance. What about you, Luca? What's your cuisine highlight?
It has to be the smørrebrød. The intricate layers, the rye bread foundation, it's like a culinary architecture rooted in tradition but elevated to modern gastronomy.
Oh, the way you describe it, Luca, I can almost taste it. And as we wandered through historical pathways and ducked into cozy cafes, didn't it feel like we were living those fairy tales penned by Hans Christian Andersen himself?
Without a doubt, Lara, Copenhagen is like a storybook that never ends. Just when you think you've reached the last page, a new chapter begins with another beautiful square, another contemporary art piece hidden around the corner.
Our listeners are such an integral part of our storytelling, too. It always warms my heart when they share their own travel experiences and exchange tips. We're like a global family, aren't we, Luca?
Speaking of our listeners, just a reminder for you all to share your own Copenhagen stories with us on social media. We love hearing from you and often include your tips and stories in our podcast.
And because we can't get enough of this city, it's tough to say goodbye. But remember, every ending is just the beginning of a new adventure. And speaking of new adventures, Luca, shall we give our listeners a little teaser for our next episode?
Oh, I thought you'd never ask. While we can't reveal too much, let's just say we'll be unpacking the troves of history and the gusts of saltwater spray in a city known as the gateway to the Mediterranean.
Mysterious and thrilling, as always. Well, it's been a pleasure as great as a ride through Copenhagen's bicycle lanes. Thank you for tuning in, for being part of our journey, and for embracing the world through travel with Lara and Luca.
Until next time, take a little bit of Copenhagen's Hygge with you into your day. Keep exploring, keep laughing, and keep that curiosity alive. Safe travels, and we'll see you in the next city.
Farewell, friends.